The mare stood in the center of the paddock, her copper coat gleaming like molten bronze in the late afternoon sun. She moved with a grace that seemed almost choreographed, each step deliberate and powerful. Her muscles rippled beneath her skin as she trotted along the fence line, head held high, nostrils flaring. This wasn't just any horse. Anyone with even a passing knowledge of bloodlines could see it in the arch of her neck, the perfect slope of her shoulder, the way her hooves seemed to float above the ground. But Shirley Gibbs had no idea. She'd driven 3 hours to the auction on a Tuesday afternoon with exactly $250 in her pocket and a desperate need for a gentle trail horse. Her old gelding had passed away 6 months earlier, and the emptiness in her small barn had become unbearable. She wasn't looking for anything fancy. Just something calm, something safe, something that wouldn't drain her already tight budget. The parking lot was half empty when Shirley arrived at Clearwater Auction House. It was one of those smaller, county-level sales that happened every few months, where local farmers and hobby owners came to buy and sell without all the pretense of the major breeding operations. Shirley had been to exactly 2 horse auctions in her entire life, and both times she'd left empty-handed, too nervous to actually bid on anything. Today was supposed to be different. She walked past the holding pens where horses of every description stood waiting for their turn in the ring. There were stocky quarter horses with kind eyes, a few older thoroughbreds whose racing days were long behind them, some draft crosses, and a handful of ponies that would be perfect for children. Shirley studied each one carefully, looking for that spark of connection, that feeling that would tell her, this is the one. Then she saw her. She was in pen number 47, standing apart from the other horses, and even to Shirley's untrained eye she seemed different. Her coat shone with health, her eyes were bright and intelligent, and despite being in an unfamiliar place surrounded by strange horses, she appeared calm and composed. She looked at Shirley as she approached, and there was something almost regal in her gaze. Shirley checked the tag on the pen. No name, just a number and a brief description. Bay mare, 6 years old, sound. That was it. No breeding information, no performance record, nothing. In her limited experience, that usually meant either the horse had no notable background or the seller didn't want to provide details for whatever reason. She spent the next 20 minutes just watching her. The mare didn't pace or whinny or show any signs of stress. She simply stood there, occasionally shifting her weight or flicking away a fly with her tail. Other potential buyers walked past, some glancing at her briefly before moving on to horses with more complete paperwork. The auction started at 2 o'clock sharp. Shirley found a seat near the middle of the small arena, her palms already sweating despite the chill in the air. The auctioneer was a weathered man in his 60s named Bill Crawford, known throughout the county for his rapid-fire calling and fair dealings. She watched as horse after horse came through, some selling for a few $100s, others going for several thousand. She waited. Pen after pen emptied. Numbers were called. Horses were led into the ring, shown briefly, and sold. Shirley kept her eyes on the schedule board, watching for number 47. It was nearly 4:30 when she heard the number called, but something was off. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, but instead of the bay mare Shirley had been watching, a gray gelding was led into the ring. She frowned, confused. She checked the board again, definitely said Lot 47. But this wasn't the right horse. She watched as the bidding started at $500. The gelding was nice enough, well-muscled and alert, but it wasn't the mare. Within minutes he sold for $1,800, and Shirley went back to waiting. Another 20 minutes passed. The crowd was thinning now, people heading home with their new purchases or leaving after failing to find what they wanted. Shirley was starting to wonder if she'd somehow missed the mare, or if she'd been pulled from the sale. Then the loudspeaker crackled. Lot 63, Bill announced. Bay mare, 6 years old. The mare from pen 47 was led into the ring. Shirley's heart jumped. This was it. She straightened in her seat, suddenly hyper-aware of everything around her. She'd prepared a mental limit of $250. But looking at the mare now under the arena lights, she had a sinking feeling that she'd go for much more. We'll start the bidding at $5,000, Bill said. Shirley felt her stomach drop. $5,000? That was so far beyond her budget that she might as well have been trying to buy a Ferrari. She slumped back in her seat, disappointed but not surprised. Of course a horse that beautiful would be expensive, she'd been foolish to hope. Silence filled the arena. Bill looked around, his experienced eyes scanning the sparse crowd. 5,000? He repeated. Anyone? More silence. All right then, let's try 4,000. Nothing. Shirley sat up slightly. This was unusual. Why wasn't anyone bidding? She glanced around at the handful of people still remaining. Most looked tired, ready to go home. A few were on their phones, barely paying attention. 3,000, Bill said, and she could hear a note of frustration creeping into his voice. Still nothing. 2,000? The silence stretched on. Shirley found herself leaning forward in her seat. $1,000 for this fine mare, Bill called out. She's got excellent conformation, sound in all respects, perfect age. 200, Shirley heard herself say. The words came out before she could stop them. Every head in the arena turned to look at her. Bill's eyebrows shot up. I've got 200, he said slowly. Anyone give me 300? He waited. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. 200? Going once. Going twice. He paused one more time, seeming almost reluctant. Sold to bidder 91 for $200. Shirley couldn't believe it. Her hands were shaking as she filled out the paperwork and handed over the cash. The clerk gave her the mare's basic health certificate and transfer documents. And that's when Shirley noticed something odd. The paperwork seemed hastily prepared, with several sections left blank or marked N.A. Is this everything? Shirley asked the clerk, a young woman who looked as confused as she felt. That's what we have on file, the clerk said with a shrug. Sometimes people don't provide full documentation. You'll want to have your vet do a complete check anyway. Shirley walked out to the holding area in a daze. A handler brought the mare out, and as he handed her the lead rope, he gave her a strange look. You know what you just bought? He asked quietly. A 6-year-old bay mare, Shirley replied, suddenly nervous. Is something wrong with her? He opened his mouth as if to say something, then shook his head. Just take good care of her. Then he walked away before she could ask what he meant. The drive home was nerve-wracking. Shirley had borrowed a trailer from her neighbor that morning, optimistic that she might actually go through with a purchase this time. The mare loaded easily, like she'd done it 1,000 times before, and rode quietly without any fuss. Every few minutes, Shirley would glance in her rearview mirror at the trailer, still hardly believing what had just happened. When she got home, she led the mare into the small barn and settled her in the stall she'd prepared. The mare immediately went to the water bucket and drank deeply, then investigated the hay Shirley had put out. Shirley stood outside the stall for over an hour, just watching her, trying to figure out why such a beautiful horse had sold for so little. Maybe she had a hidden vice. Maybe she was dangerous under saddle. Maybe she had some medical condition that wasn't immediately apparent. These thoughts circled in Shirley's mind as she finally headed to the house, exhausted from the long day. That night, Shirley called her friend Alice, who'd been riding horses her entire life, and knew far more about them than Shirley ever would. You did what? Alice practically shrieked when Shirley told her the story. You bought a horse at auction without having someone knowledgeable with you? I know, Shirley said. But Alice, she's beautiful, and she was only $200. What's the worst that could happen? Do you want that list alphabetically or in order of severity? Alice replied. I'm coming over tomorrow to look at her. Don't ride her until I get there. True to her word, Alice showed up at 8 the next morning. Shirley led the mare out of her stall and into the small outdoor arena she had behind the barn. The morning sun caught the mare's coat and made it glow, and Shirley saw Alice's eyes widen. Well, she's gorgeous, Alice admitted, walking slowly around the mare. Great conformation, good bone structure, clear eyes, healthy coat. She ran her hands down each leg, picked up each hoof, examined her teeth. She seems sound and healthy. You might have actually lucked out. They spent the next hour working with her. The mare accepted a saddle without any fuss, stood perfectly still for mounting, and responded to the lightest cues. She had a smooth, comfortable gait and seemed well trained in both English and Western disciplines. "This doesn't make sense," Alice muttered as they watched the mare cool down. "A horse this well-trained, this young, this beautiful? She should have gone for 10,000 minimum, probably more. Something's not adding up." "Maybe the auction house just didn't market her well?" Shirley suggested. Alice shook her head. Even with no marketing, someone should have recognized her quality. Unless, she trailed off, thinking. Unless, what? Unless there was supposed to be paperwork that didn't make it to the auction. Important paperwork. The kind that would tell buyers exactly what they're looking at. They left it at that, and Alice went home, promising to ask around at some of the local barns to see if anyone knew anything about a bay mare that had recently changed hands. Shirley fell into a routine with the mare over the next week. She still hadn't named her, feeling like somehow she needed to know more about her first. Every day she'd groom her, work with her in the arena, and just spend time in her presence. The mare was the calmest, most responsive horse Shirley had ever worked with. Sometimes Shirley would catch her looking at her with those intelligent eyes, and she'd swear the mare was trying to tell her something. It was a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after the auction, when everything changed. Shirley was in the barn, mucking out the mare's stall while she stood in the cross ties, when she heard a vehicle pull up outside. Then another. Then a third. She stepped out of the barn to find 3 expensive-looking trucks parked in her driveway and at least 8 people climbing out. Her first thought was that she was being robbed. Her second thought was that maybe she'd accidentally bought a stolen horse. Both thoughts made her heart race. A woman in her 40s, dressed in expensive riding gear, approached first. Her face was a mixture of relief and something that looked like barely controlled anger. "Is that her?" the woman asked, pointing toward the barn. "Is that who?" Shirley managed to say. "Crimson Dynasty," another person said, a man in his 60s, wearing a jacket embroidered with the logo of a major breeding farm. "The mare you bought at Clearwater Auction." The name meant nothing to Shirley. "I bought a bay mare there, yes." But there was no name on her paperwork, just... "We know," the woman interrupted. "Because someone made a catastrophic error and sent her to auction. Without her papers, without proper identification, without anything that would tell buyers who she is." Shirley felt her mouth go dry. "Who is she?" The older man stepped forward. "Crimson Dynasty is one of the most successful eventing prospects in the region. She's out of dynasties crowned by Crimson Thunder, both internationally recognized bloodlines. Her full siblings have sold for over $100,000 each. She herself has already won 2 major competitions and was being prepared for Olympic-level trials." The world seemed to tilt slightly. That's not possible. She sold for $200. "Because she wasn't supposed to be at that auction at all," the woman said, and now the anger was clear in her voice. "She was supposed to be at Prestige Equine Center for a breeding evaluation. Someone at the transport company mixed up the paperwork and sent her to the wrong facility. By the time we realized what happened, she'd already been sold." Shirley looked back at the barn, where the mare, Crimson Dynasty, stood calmly in the crossties, completely unaware of the chaos swirling around her. "We're prepared to compensate you fairly," the older man said, pulling out a checkbook. "We'll pay you $5,000 for her return, which is well above what you paid." "She's worth $250,000, someone else interjected. "At least." The number hit Shirley like a physical blow. $250,000. She'd bought a $250,000 horse for $200 because of a paperwork error. "I need to sit down," Shirley said faintly. They gave her a few minutes to process while they examined the mare, confirming her identity through photographs, physical markings, and a microchip scan that one of them did with a reader they'd brought. Everything checked out. This was definitely Crimson Dynasty, champion eventing prospect, and Shirley had accidentally bought her for the price of a used saddle. "The auction house is investigating how this happened," the woman explained once Shirley had regained her composure. "Preliminary findings suggest it was a perfect storm of errors. Wrong transport company contacted, mare sent to wrong facility, paperwork incomplete, and the auction house assumed she was just another unregistered mare from a local owner looking to sell." "What about the starting bid?" Shirley asked. "The auctioneer started at $5,000. "That was Lot 47's actual starting bid," the woman said. "But they brought out the wrong horse first. That was the transport company's error too. They mixed up two pens. When they finally brought Dynasty out, the auctioneer was running behind, the crowd had thinned, and he was probably just trying to get through the last lots. He likely didn't even look at which horse was in the ring, just read off the basic description. It was such an absurd series of mistakes that it seemed almost impossible. Yet here they all were. "So you want her back," Shirley said quietly. The older man nodded. "We'll make it worth your while. $10,000. That's a significant profit for a week of ownership." Shirley looked at the mare again. In just 7 days, she'd become part of her life. Shirley had started each morning by greeting her, ended each evening checking on her one last time. She'd filled the emptiness in the barn, and, if Shirley was honest with herself, the emptiness in her heart since losing her old horse. But she wasn't really Shirley's. She never had been. She belonged to these people, to a world of high-level competition and breeding programs and Olympic dreams. A world so far removed from Shirley's small farm and trail riding aspirations that they might as well have been on different planets. "Can I have a few minutes with her?" Shirley asked. Alone? They agreed, stepping back toward their vehicles while Shirley walked into the barn. The mare watched her approach, her dark eyes calm and trusting. Shirley stroked her neck, feeling the warmth of her coat beneath her palm. "You're pretty special, aren't you?" Shirley whispered. "I should have known." Nobody that perfect ends up at a county auction by accident. The mare lowered her head, pressing her forehead against Shirley's chest in a gesture she'd come to love over the past week. It was like she was telling her it was okay, that she understood. Shirley took a deep breath and walked back outside. 20,000, she said. The group looked at each other. The older man smiled slightly. Done. And, Shirley continued, I want to know what happens to her. Updates on her training, her competitions. And if she ever has a foal, I'd like to be considered if one is available for purchase. At fair market price, she added quickly. I'm not asking for handouts. The woman who'd spoken first extended her hand. That's more than fair. You could have made this much more difficult. You're handling this with a lot of grace. The paperwork was drawn up on the spot. They had a lawyer in their group who'd come prepared for various scenarios. Shirley signed over ownership of Crimson Dynasty, received a check for $20,000, and watched as they loaded her into a professional transport trailer that made her borrowed one look like a rusted wheelbarrow. Before they closed the trailer door, Shirley walked up one last time. The mare looked at her, and Shirley stroked her face. Go be amazing, she told her. That's what you were born to do. The convoy pulled out of Shirley's driveway, and she stood there in the settling dust, check in hand, feeling the strangest mixture of loss and relief and amazement. Alice called that evening, having heard through the barn grapevine what had happened. You sold her back? Alice asked, incredulous. You could have fought it. Legally, she was yours. I know, Shirley said. But that's not who I am. She deserved to be where she belongs. You're a better person than most, Alice said quietly. What are you going to do now? Shirley looked at the check on her kitchen table. $20,000. More money than she'd ever had at one time in her life. I'm going to find the right horse, she said. And this time, I'll actually be able to afford her. 3 months later, Shirley found her. Not a champion, not a horse destined for Olympic glory, but a sweet-tempered quarter-horse mare named Buttons, who was perfect for trail riding and had the kindest eyes Shirley had ever seen. She bought her for $3,000, used another $5,000 to build a new run-in shelter and upgrade her fencing, and put the rest in savings. She still got updates on Crimson Dynasty. The mare was competing at the international level now, winning ribbons and turning heads wherever she went. The owners made good on their promise and sent Shirley photos and videos regularly. She was magnificent to watch, doing what she was always meant to do. 2 years passed. Shirley and Buttons became inseparable companions, spending countless hours on the trails that wound through the hills near her property. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, and while Shirley still followed Crimson Dynasty's career with interest, the ache of losing her had faded into a bittersweet memory. Then one spring morning, Shirley's phone rang. Is this Shirley Gibbs? A familiar voice asked. It was the woman from the farm, the one who'd come to reclaim Dynasty. "Yes," Shirley said, her heart suddenly beating faster. "Is everything all right? Is Dynasty okay?" "She's perfect," the woman said, and Shirley could hear the smile in her voice. "Actually, she's more than perfect. She's expecting." Shirley sat down slowly. "A foal? We bred her to one of the top eventing stallions in the country last year. The foal is due in about 6 weeks, and we wanted to reach out to you first, as we promised. We're offering you the first opportunity to purchase the foal when it's weaned." For a moment, Shirley couldn't speak. She'd thought about this possibility over the past 2 years, wondered if they'd remember their promise, but she'd never actually expected it to happen. What kind of price are we talking about?" she finally asked. "Given Dynasty's bloodlines and her sire's credentials, we'd normally list a foal like this for $60,000 to $80,000, the woman said. "But we haven't forgotten what you did for us. You could have made our lives very difficult, but you chose grace instead. We're offering the foal to you for $15,000. Shirley's mind raced. $15,000 was still a fortune, but with the money she'd saved from the original sale and the improvements to her property, she actually had it. The question was whether she should spend it. "Can I think about it?" Shirley asked. "Of course. We'll send you photos as soon as the foal is born, and you can come visit any time. There's no pressure. We just wanted to honor our commitment to you." Over the next 6 weeks, Shirley thought of little else. She discussed it with Alice, who was characteristically blunt. "Do you want to raise a foal?" Alice asked. "Because that's years of training, years before you can even ride it. And it's not going to be a trail horse, Shirley. This is an eventing prospect from champion bloodlines. It's going to need specialized training, competitions, everything that comes with that world." "I know," Shirley said. "But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe I could learn, grow into it." Alice studied her friend's face. "You've been watching those eventing videos, haven't you?" Shirley felt herself blush. There's something beautiful about it. The partnership, the precision, the trust between horse and rider. I never thought it was something I could be part of, but now you're wondering if maybe you could," Alice finished. She was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "You know what? I think you should do it. Life's too short to always play it safe." The call came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 years to the day since Shirley had bought Dynasty at auction. The foal had been born overnight, a filly with her mother's copper coat and a distinctive white star on her forehead. Shirley made the drive to the breeding farm that same day. When she arrived, they led her to a spacious foaling stall where Crimson Dynasty stood protectively over her newborn daughter. The filly was already on her feet, wobbling slightly but strong and alert. Dynasty looked up when Shirley approached, and for a moment, Shirley would have sworn the mare recognized her. Dynasty nickered softly, and the filly turned to look at Shirley with curious, intelligent eyes that reminded her so much of her mother's. "She's perfect," Shirley whispered. "She is," the woman agreed. "And if you want her, she's yours. We'll keep her here until she's weaned, of course, and we can help you find good training resources when the time comes." Shirley watched the filly take her first tentative steps toward her, this tiny creature who represented so much more than just a horse. She represented possibility, growth, a chance to step outside the comfortable boundaries Shirley had drawn around her life. "What will you name her?" the woman asked. Shirley smiled, the decision suddenly crystal clear in her mind. "Second chance," she said, "because that's what she is. That's what they both are." She signed the papers that day, arranging for payment and the filly's care until weaning. Over the next 6 months, Shirley made the drive to the breeding farm every week, watching Second Chance grow from a wobbly newborn into a confident, playful youngster who would race across the pasture with the same grace her mother had shown. During those months, Shirley also started learning. She took lessons at a local eventing barn, discovering muscles she didn't know she had and skills she'd never thought she'd need. She was the oldest beginner in every class, and some days she felt ridiculous, but she kept showing up. When Second Chance was finally weaned and came home to Shirley's farm, Shirley was ready. Not ready to ride her, that would be years away, but ready to begin the long journey of building trust and partnership with this extraordinary filly. Alice came over the day Second Chance arrived, watching as Shirley led the filly into the barn, into the same stall where she'd first kept Dynasty 2 years earlier. "You know this is crazy, right?" Alice said, but she was grinning. You went from wanting a quiet trail horse to owning an eventing prospect worth more than your truck. I know, Shirley said, watching as Second Chance explored her new home with bright-eyed curiosity. But somehow, it feels exactly right. Years would pass before Shirley would know if she'd made the right decision, before she'd find out if Second Chance had inherited her mother's talent and temperament, before she'd discover whether she herself had what it took to succeed in the demanding world of eventing. But standing there in her barn watching the fillies settle in, Shirley realized that the outcome didn't really matter. What mattered was that she'd said yes to possibility. She'd taken the money from an auctioneer's mistake and turned it into something more than she'd ever imagined. She'd learned that sometimes the universe doesn't just give you what you want. It gives you what you need to become who you're meant to be. And it had all started with a $200 bid on a Tuesday afternoon, when neither Shirley nor anyone else in that auction house had any idea what they were really looking at. Every morning, Shirley would walk out to the barn and find Second Chance waiting at her stall door, ears pricked forward, eyes bright with intelligence and trust. And every morning, Shirley would smile and think about how a simple mistake at a county auction had changed the entire trajectory of her life. The auctioneer's error hadn't just sold a champion for $200. It had opened a door to a world Shirley never knew existed, taught her lessons she never expected to learn, and given her not one but two incredible horses who would forever change how she saw herself and what she was capable of achieving. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible horse tales that remind us why these magnificent animals hold such a special place in our hearts. Hit that like button and share with your fellow horse lovers. What would you have done in Shirley's situation? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. And remember, every horse has a story, and sometimes the best stories come from the most unexpected places.